Inside the echoes of an empty house, a woman picks through the pieces of her life. Her name is Jane Alexander. She's 58, a recent widow and lonely, until one day when a family friend by the name of Tom O'Donnell comes calling, and suddenly romance is in the air.
He was very charming, and he was very comforting, and really a great companion. And we fell in love and planned to spend the rest of our lives together.
O'Donnell casts himself as a world traveler, regaling Jane with stories of gold carried out of Rhodesia and precious metals mined from South Africa. According to O'Donnell, his life abroad has netted him a small fortune, none of which, unfortunately, is available to him right now.
He told me that he had put his assets into a trust fund in Switzerland. It was going to take about 2 or 3 years for the trust to mature, and when it did, he would get $1.2 million.
In the meantime, O'Donnell convinces Jane to mortgage her home for the couple's spending money. For her part, Jane Alexander is happy again, believing she has found a lasting love. The couple settles into the expensive house, and everything seems fine until 3 years later, when Jane Alexander's world is turned upside down. At 11:30 a.m., San Jose Police Detective Joe Brockman receives a report about an elderly woman who has not been seen in days. He heads to the address, 165 Arroyo Way, where Gertrude McCabe has lived for 15 years. Brockman enters through the front door.
She was lying on the floor to one side. There's a good amount of blood to the area in the carpet just below where her head was.
San Jose police move to notify the victim's next of kin. At 2:15 p.m., Jane Alexander receives a phone call.
And he said, "Well, I'm terribly sorry to have to inform you your aunt's been the victim of a homicide." The first question he asked, which I'll never forget, he said, "Mrs. Alexander, what is your income?" And Tom, of course, was sitting there. I said, "Oh, well, Tom handles all the finances in the house." So then I just threw the ball to Tom.
Tom O'Donnell explains to the detective what he has been telling Jane for the past 3 years. The following month, detectives in San Jose make another request of Jane and Tom.
He wanted to know if we'd come down and get our fingerprints taken. And I was really insulted when he asked me that. Why hadn't they taken our fingerprints 6 months, 8 months ago? Weren't they working the case? I mean, I was indignant.
The couple eventually agrees to be printed. While at the police station, detectives ask Jane if she can identify a sample of lipstick taken from this bloody tissue.
And I looked at the lipstick and said, "Oh, that's not Aunt Gert's lipstick, that's my lipstick. That's the color of my lipstick."
The police collect a sample from Jane's lipstick, and the couple is sent home. 10 months after her aunt's murder, Jane Alexander is awaiting her inheritance from Gertrude McCabe's estate. Believing that there is enough money coming to pay off their debts, Alexander and O'Donnell decide to take a vacation overseas. Alexander withdraws $10,000 on credit from her bank and hands it over to her boyfriend, who's going to book the couple's trip. The next day, Jane returns home to find Tom and her money gone. 2 days later, the widow receives a letter. O'Donnell tells Jane that his life as well as hers are in jeopardy. He writes, "They have been watching us for some time. They know our routines and habits well." He goes on to write that he must leave the U.S. and go back to Europe with his former associates. The letter states, "Even if by some miracle I escape from them over there, I could not come back to you, as you would be the first one they would be watching."
I cried. And, of course, his life was also in jeopardy, so he had to go with them. That was the only way he could keep the wolf from my door.
Although his letter asks her not to, Jane immediately calls the police. And as detectives run background checks on the missing man, they learn that the only wolf after Jane Alexander is an astute confidence man named Tom O'Donnell.
He'd done this kind of thing before. He basically would try to establish a relationship with a single woman or a widowed woman or something along those lines and use her to live on.
While living with Jane and without her knowledge, O'Donnell had run through more than $200,000. Borrowed against the second mortgage he convinced Alexander to take out on her house. Unable to make payments on the mortgage, police theorize O'Donnell decided to look around for another source of income, and that is when he might have turned to murder.
Tom centers in on the estate of Gertrude McCabe and begins to plot her murder so that Jane would benefit. And who's controlling Jane and Jane's checkbook? Tom O'Donnell.
They ask Alexander to file charges of fraud against her erstwhile boyfriend. Alexander, however, refuses, unable to accept her boyfriend as a thief, clinging to his farewell letter and waiting for the day he might return. Finally, in December of 1985, detectives show her this tissue, stained with blood and Jane's type of lipstick. At the time of her aunt's death, investigators had questioned Alexander about the lipstick, but never told her where the tissue was actually found. Now they fill in the blanks.
He said, well, I just thought maybe you'd think about it, and you explained to me how that lipstick on that Kleenex could have gotten beside your aunt's body.
Jane Alexander had a habit of kissing her boyfriend Tom O'Donnell on the cheek. He also had a habit of wiping the lipstick off with a Kleenex and then stuffing the tissue back into his pocket.
Which meant that Tom was there, that Tom did it. How else could the lipstick get on the Kleenex that was found with the body?
Detectives don't have enough evidence to support a charge of murder. With Jane Alexander on board, however, they do have a splendid case for fraud and embezzlement. Now it's just a matter of waiting for their suspect to show himself. On February 8, 1985, detectives find Tom O'Donnell in a city built for his particular talents, Las Vegas, Nevada. O'Donnell is pulled from Sin City and sent back to California to face charges of criminal fraud. O'Donnell is charged with 4 counts of defrauding Jane Alexander. The trial lasts 10 days. The jury finds O'Donnell guilty, and the con man is sentenced to 4 years in prison. O'Donnell is released from prison after 18 months, and cold case detectives decide to pay him a visit.
His story was that he had flown to Burbank to visit a friend of his named Harry Carmichael. They were, I guess, lifelong friends. And once he got to Burbank, he said he rented a car and he drove to Las Vegas to gamble, and then he drove the car back to Burbank and flew back home. We basically drove the exact same route, the quickest route to get from Burbank to Gertrude McCabe's house in San Jose and back to Harry Carmichael's apartment and back to the Burbank airport, and the mileage was exact as the same mileage on the rental car.
669 miles, the exact distance round trip between Burbank and Gertrude McCabe's San Jose home. The exact distance Tom O'Donnell drove in his rental car on the morning she was killed. In July of 1995, Deputy DA Joyce Allegro picks through the pieces that are the McCabe murder investigation.
There were loan documents, bank records, things like that that were in the records. We had phone bills, and there was just all sorts of pieces of paper.
2 of the pieces of paper are records of phone calls placed by O'Donnell in 1983. The first documented call is to Tom O'Donnell's nephew, a man to whom O'Donnell owed $15,000.
He talked to the nephew's wife, and he told her that they would be getting money soon because Jane's aunt had died and left her some money.
Allegro notes the time and date of the phone call, 11:03 a.m. on Saturday, October 22nd. The day before Gertrude McCabe's body was actually discovered by police. The day before anyone but the killer knew she was dead. The second call is even more damaging. It was placed the day after McCabe's body was discovered, to Jane Alexander's son Bill and his wife Roxana.
Tom came on the phone and described for us the murder of my mom's aunt in some detail. And my wife upstairs was jotting down notes as he was speaking, because it was basically a shocking call to the family telling them that there was a murder committed.
On December 20th, a warrant is issued for his arrest. After 5 years and 26 courtroom delays, Tom O'Donnell finally stands trial for murder. A jury convicts him of killing Gertrude McCabe, and he is sentenced to a term of 25 years to life.